I'll never forget the night I found myself sitting on the bathroom floor, my wedding ring tossed onto the counter, my face buried in my hands. I had destroyed everything that once felt sacred. I had cheated on the man who had given me nothing but love, and in that moment, I thought my life was over. The guilt was so heavy I couldn't breathe. I remember whispering, "God, you can't possibly forgive me for this. I'm done." But little did I know, that very night, the same God I thought would turn his back on me was already preparing a way for me to find healing, forgiveness, and hope. Folded hands before I share the full story, I just want to pause and thank you, my subscribers, my family here on YouTube. Your support, your comments, your encouragement, it means the world to me. If you're new here, welcome. This channel is all about real-life stories, testimonies, and faith-filled encouragement to remind you that no matter how far you think you've fallen, God's grace can reach you. Now, let me take you back, to the beginning. When people looked at me and my husband, they saw a picture-perfect couple. Church every Sunday. 2 kids. A house with a white fence. Smiles in every Christmas photo. But behind closed doors, our marriage was bleeding, and I was the one holding the knife. My name is Rachel. I grew up in the church. I knew Bible verses by heart before I was 10. I could recite Psalm 23 like it was my favorite song. I knew right from wrong. And yet, somewhere along the way, life's disappointments and my own restless heart began pulling me away from the God I claimed to serve. My husband, Daniel, is the kind of man every woman prays for: steady, kind, faithful. He works hard, he's gentle with our kids, and he has a heart that always points to God. But if I'm being honest, sometimes his stability felt boring. And that boredom turned into a dangerous hunger I didn't recognize at first. It started innocently enough. A coworker, Mark, began paying attention to me. Compliments. Text messages. Coffee breaks that turned into lunch. For the first time in years, I felt noticed, desired. And instead of guarding my heart like Proverbs 4 verse 23 commands, I let the door crack open. Sin never crashes into your life with flashing lights and alarms. It slips in quietly, like a whisper you tell yourself you deserve to hear. The first time I met Mark outside of work, guilt ate at me before anything even happened. I told myself it was just a conversation. Just 2 friends. But deep down, I knew I was standing on the edge of a cliff. And then one night, I fell. I can still feel the weight of that choice. Walking into sin feels thrilling for a moment, but the crash comes fast. The second it was over, shame wrapped around me like chains. I looked in the mirror and didn't recognize myself. I wanted to scrub my skin until I felt clean again, but nothing, no shower, no tears, could wash away the filth I felt inside. For weeks, I carried the secret. I tried to smile at Daniel. I tried to play with our kids like everything was normal. But the guilt was suffocating me. Every time Daniel prayed before dinner, I wanted to scream, "Don't pray with me. I don't deserve it." I thought I could bury it. Hide it. Pretend it didn't happen. But sin has a way of rotting everything it touches. And the day came when Daniel looked me in the eyes and asked the question that shattered me. "Rachel, is there someone else?" My silence was the answer he dreaded. The look on his face, that mixture of heartbreak, betrayal, and confusion, will haunt me forever. He walked out of the room without a word, and I collapsed on the floor, shaking, sobbing, begging God to undo what I had done. That night, sitting in the bathroom with my wedding ring tossed aside, I truly believed my marriage was over. And worse, I believed God was done with me too. But that's when my story turned. Because when you hit rock bottom, you discover that God is already there. The night Daniel found out about my betrayal, silence filled our house like a storm waiting to explode. I could hear the creak of the floorboards as he walked back and forth in the living room while I sat on the bed, shaking, trying to breathe through the knot in my chest. I wanted him to yell. I wanted him to slam the door, to curse me, to throw his wedding ring at me, anything that would match the punishment I felt I deserved. But instead, he said nothing. And somehow, that silence cut deeper than any words could. Hours later, when he finally came into the bedroom, his face was pale, his eyes red from crying. He looked at me, not with anger, but with a pain that felt almost holy. He whispered one question, and it shattered me all over again. Why, Rachel? Why wasn't I enough? I broke. I crumbled onto the floor, clutching his legs, sobbing so violently I could barely breathe. I don't know, Daniel. I don't know why I did it. I don't know what's wrong with me. I hate myself for it. I hate what I've done to you, to us. I don't deserve you. For the first time in our marriage, he pulled away from me. He grabbed his keys, and before I could say another word, the door slammed, leaving me alone in the dark with nothing but my guilt. That night was the first time in years I truly prayed, not the neat little prayers before dinner, not the casual prayers asking God for blessings, but the raw, desperate cry of a soul drowning. God, I don't deserve to live. I don't deserve this marriage. I've sinned against you, against Daniel, against myself. Please, please, if you're still listening, don't let this be the end. I don't even know how to fix this. I can't fix this. Help me. And for the first time in weeks, I felt something. Not relief, not forgiveness yet, but a strange kind of stillness, like God whispering, I'm here. You're not alone. The days that followed were a blur. Daniel stayed at his brother's house, and I had to answer the painful questions from our kids. Where's Daddy? Why isn't he home? I swallowed my tears and told them he was taking a break, but inside, I feared he'd never come back. I tried calling, texting, writing long emails that started with apologies and ended with pleas. Sometimes he'd respond with one-word answers. Sometimes not at all. My friends from church noticed something was wrong, and when I finally broke down and confessed to one of the older sisters, she didn't condemn me. She hugged me, prayed with me, and reminded me of something I had forgotten. Rachel, David committed adultery and murder, and God still forgave him when he repented. Don't you dare believe the lie that you're too far gone for God's mercy. Those words pierced through my shame like light breaking through a crack in the wall. For the first time, I allowed myself to believe maybe, just maybe, there was still hope. 2 weeks later, Daniel finally agreed to meet me at a cafe. I'll never forget walking in and seeing him sitting there, Bible open, as if he was trying to find answers too. When our eyes met, my whole body shook. I sat down across from him, and for a long moment, neither of us spoke. The silence was heavy, but this time it felt different, less like punishment and more like a test of courage. Finally, Daniel cleared his throat and said, I prayed last night. I told God I didn't know if I could ever look at you the same again. I told him I wanted to walk away. But Rachel, every time I tried to picture leaving, I felt him say, stay. Don't give up yet. I burst into tears right there in the cafe. The fact that he was even listening to God in this situation, that he hadn't hardened his heart completely, was a miracle. He continued, I don't trust you right now. I can't pretend I'm not broken. But I know God's love isn't just for the moments we're easy to love. And if he hasn't given up on me, maybe I shouldn't give up on you either. That conversation didn't magically fix our marriage. If anything, it revealed how broken we truly were. But it was the beginning of something I didn't think possible, reconciliation. The weeks that followed were filled with tears, counseling, late-night arguments, and long prayers that sometimes ended in silence. Daniel asked questions I didn't want to answer. I confessed more than I wanted to admit. And yet, in that raw honesty, something began to shift. We started reading the Bible together again, something we hadn't done in years. One night, Daniel read aloud from Hosea, the story of a prophet who loved a woman that kept running back to unfaithfulness. And as he read, his voice cracked. That's what it feels like, Rachel. Like I'm Hosea and you're Gomer. But if God used that story to show how much he loves his people, maybe he's teaching us something too. That night, we prayed together for the first time since my confession. It wasn't a pretty prayer. It was messy, broken, filled with pauses and tears. But I believe heaven leaned in close that night, because something inside us both began to heal. But reconciliation isn't a straight line, it's a battlefield. There were days Daniel couldn't look me in the eyes. Days when he recoiled if I touched his hand. Days when I thought, this is pointless. We'll never be whole again. And every time I was tempted to give up, I had to fall on my knees and remind myself, God's strength is made perfect in weakness. 2 Corinthians 12 verse 9. Slowly, so slowly it felt like watching grass grow, trust began to rebuild. Daniel saw my repentance wasn't just words, it was action. I cut off all contact with Mark. I set boundaries at work. I opened up my phone, my passwords, my location. Transparency became my new way of living. And little by little, Daniel's walls began to lower. One night, months later, I found myself lying beside him in bed, and for the first time in forever, he reached over, held my hand, and whispered, I'm not healed yet. But I'm trying. And I still love you. That sentence was worth every tear, every prayer, every sleepless night. Looking back, I realized the breaking point of our marriage was also the breaking point of my pride, my selfishness, and my illusion that I could live apart from God's will. My sin had dragged us to the edge of destruction, but God's mercy had reached into the fire and pulled us out. The same God who met me on the bathroom floor in my shame was now showing me that His grace doesn't just cover sin, it rebuilds what sin tried to destroy. And that realization set the stage for what came next, not just surviving, but learning how to live again. The day Daniel slipped his hand back into mine and whispered, I still love you, something inside me broke. But this time, it wasn't shame. It was gratitude. For the first time since my failure, I began to believe that maybe God really could bring beauty from ashes. But healing wasn't instant. Forgiveness doesn't erase scars overnight, it's a journey. And that journey tested everything inside of me. We started attending marriage counseling through our church. Sitting across from a pastor with both of us holding back tears, I felt exposed. Every ugly detail was laid bare. Every wound reopened. But our counselor reminded us, confession brings pain, but it also brings freedom. What stays hidden will rot. What is brought into the light can heal. Daniel struggled. I could see it in his eyes when he looked at me, the flashbacks, the replay of betrayal, the questions that never seemed to end. Some nights he'd roll over in bed and face the wall, silent. And every time, the enemy whispered in my ear, see? He'll never really forgive you. This will never work. But in those moments, I clung to God's promises. He makes all things new, Revelation 21 verse 5. Where sin increased, grace abounded all the more, Romans 5 verse 20. Every day I had a choice, believe the enemy's lies, or believe God's word. Months passed, and something began to shift. Our prayers grew longer. Our conversations grew deeper. We started not just reading the Bible together, but living it. One night, after putting the kids to bed, Daniel and I sat at the kitchen table, holding mugs of tea. He looked at me, really looked at me, and said, Rachel, I've been praying for God to help me forgive you. And I realized, forgiveness isn't a feeling. It's a decision. And I've decided I'm not going to let bitterness steal the rest of our marriage. I wept. I couldn't believe the grace in his words. In that moment, I saw Christ in him, because only a man surrendered to God could offer that kind of mercy. Forgiveness didn't mean forgetting. It didn't mean pretending nothing happened. But it meant choosing love over resentment, hope over despair. One Sunday, our pastor preached on John 8, the woman caught in adultery. She was dragged before Jesus, humiliated, condemned by the crowd. Everyone expected him to stone her. But instead, he said, let him who is without sin cast the first stone. And one by one, the accusers left, until only Jesus and the woman remained. Then he said, neither do I condemn you. Go and sin no more. I sat in the pew, trembling. That was me, the guilty woman. The unfaithful wife. And yet, Jesus' words pierced through centuries to reach me, "Neither do I condemn you." That day, I walked to the altar, knelt down, and surrendered everything: my guilt, my shame, my marriage, my future. For the first time in my life, I understood grace. Slowly, our marriage began to look different. We laughed again. We went on walks again. We started doing family Bible studies with the kids, showing them not just a picture-perfect family but a real one. Broken, forgiven, healed. Daniel even surprised me one evening with a small gift, a simple silver ring. He slipped it onto my finger and said, "This isn't to replace the first one. It's to remind me that God is writing a new story for us. Not perfect, but redeemed." I couldn't stop crying. Because the truth is, we weren't just rebuilding a marriage, we were witnessing a miracle. But here's the part one want you, my listener, my friend, to really hear: this story isn't about me. It isn't about Daniel. It's about the God who refused to let go of us even when I had let go of him. If you're listening right now and you feel like your story is over, if you're drowning in guilt, whether from betrayal, addiction, anger, or failure, I want you to know this: God's grace is bigger than your worst sin. I thought my marriage was done. I thought God was done with me. But today, I stand on the other side, not because I was strong, but because he was faithful. Our marriage isn't perfect. We still have scars. But those scars remind us of the God who heals. And if he did it for us, he can do it for you. Here's what I learned, and maybe it will help you too. 1. Sin destroys, but confession heals. Don't let shame keep you in the dark. Bring it into the light. 2. Forgiveness is a choice, not a feeling. Whether you're the one who betrayed or the one betrayed, healing starts when you decide to release it to God. 3. God never wastes pain. What the enemy meant for evil, God can turn for good, Genesis 50 verse 20. 4. Hope isn't found in people, it's found in Christ. Even if Daniel had left me, God's mercy would have carried me. Our hope must always rest in him. Today, when people see our family, they don't see perfection. They see redemption. And honestly, that's even more powerful. Because our scars tell a story of a God who takes broken people and makes them whole. So, if you're at your breaking point right now, let me tell you this. The day you think you're done is often the very day God begins to show you hope. My friend, thank you for listening to my story. And thank you, subscribers, supporters, for being part of this journey. Your comments, your prayers, your presence here means more than you know. If this story touched you, share it with someone who needs hope. Maybe it will be the light in their darkest night. And remember this: no matter how far you've fallen, no matter how broken you feel, God's mercy runs deeper still. Trust him. Cling to him. And never forget, with God, it's never the end. It's only the beginning.